Hello class, this is 9.2, Government in Athens, assignment number 59. So the main ideas for the lesson here are, number 1, aristocrats and tyrants ruled early Athens. 2, Athens created the world's first democracy. And 3, ancient democracy was different than modern democracy. The first section is on aristocrats and tyrants ruling Athens. Early Athens was not a democracy. It took time for it to get to that point. So it started off as a monarchy, which means it was ruled by a king. Then it was an oligarchy, which means it was ruled by a small group of people, in this case, a small group of wealthy landowners. At some point here, there was a rebellion to try to overthrow the oligarchy, and it failed. So a man named Draco installed harsh laws to control the people. So today, in certain countries and societies, harsh laws or rules are called draconian. So here we see an example. Draco's laws made minor crimes such as loitering, which is hanging around where you're not supposed to be, punishable by death. And then after the oligarchy, eventually there was a tyranny, T-Y-R-A-N-N-Y, where a tyrant ruled. In this case, it was a man named Pisistratus. He was a tyrant that took power from the aristocrats, and he brought peace and prosperity to Athens. He did things like he unified the city by creating festivals and building temples and monuments. Today, if you hear about a tyranny, it often has a negative connotation. It would mean it's being ruled by a tyrant is a bad thing. They would often take advantage of the power and mistreat the people, have crazy laws. But back then, that's not what that meant. A tyrant was just a strong leader that had the support of the army. The next section is Athens creates democracy. So this man here on the left is Cleisthenes. Cleisthenes came from a powerful family, but felt citizens should run the government. He didn't think it was right for just a few people to rule, or just one person. So he was very important. He was pivotal in democracy coming to Athens. So Cleisthenes is considered the father of democracy. Under Cleisthenes, citizens met on a hillside to discuss, debate, and give speeches on issues. Voting was usually done by a show of hands. Major decisions required 6,000 people to vote, but it could be difficult getting this many people, so sometimes they had to get volunteers, and they also set up a smaller elected council for some decisions. Juries who would decide on things usually were around 500 people, but they needed to be an odd number, because if it was an even number, then it could be a tie, and that would be they wouldn't be able to make a decision. Eventually, this man, Pericles, came along, and he led Athenian democracy at its height. He felt government participation was just as important as protecting Athens in war. And one thing he did was he began paying public officials and jurors for their work. So that made it more desirable and more attractive to be part of the government. But eventually, Macedonia took over Athens, and democracy slowly faded. And it was again led by one ruler for a while. The last section is on ancient democracy and how it's different from modern democracy. Modern democracy just means today, right? Today, the democracy that we have in the world today. So Athens had a direct democracy, which means each person's decision affected the outcome of a vote. You can see here in this table, Athenian direct democracy. All citizens met as a group to debate and vote directly on every issue. So they all met and they all decided. There was no separation of powers, which just means that citizens did all the jobs. They created laws, they enforced the laws, and they acted as judges. They didn't have some people doing this and some people doing that. Citizens did everything. And lastly, only free male citizens could vote. Women and slaves could not vote. American representative democracy, in the United States, it's far too big to have a direct democracy. It would not be realistic to have every single citizen voting. So we have a representative democracy, meaning Citizens elect representatives to debate and vote on issues for them. These officials meet to make laws and enforce them. There is a separation of powers in an American representative democracy, meaning some people create the laws. That would be the senators and the congressmen, congresswomen. Others enforce laws, and others judge the laws. And both men and women who are citizens have the right to vote.